Well, good afternoon once again, fellow YouTube auto repair DIY enthusiasts. I'm back again in my series of videos that I'm working on as far as this project car that I have is. This is a 1999 Honda Accord V6 EX model with about 160,000 miles. And sadly, I have recently determined it does have a blown head gasket. So I'm going to show you exactly how I determined that. To give you a little history, when I purchased this car from a neighbor, I knew there was the potential for having a blown head gasket. It did have a couple of overheat situations, and the radiator even ended up leaking in ×2, I believe. Yeah, ×2. So I've been keeping a check on the coolant level. Now, the first time the coolant level dropped, it was because the radiator was leaking and it was down below the fan shroud and it would catch on the splash shield. That was the previous video I had done. Well, I kept checking and the coolant level kept dropping. Now, I couldn't see anything obvious again. I couldn't see anything in the tailpipes. I would add the coolant, drive it about a week, and lose about a pint. So then I determined I do have a bit of a situation here. I have a block tester. I went and did a block test a couple of weeks ago, and it began to turn yellow. It had gotten from blue to the green, a slight yellow, and I said, okay, I do have exhaust gas in the coolant. I also used my large funnel, which you see in the picture. A wonderful little device. I don't know if the company name is Liesel or Lyle, but it's L-I-S-L-E. It's a handy little funnel. It's great for helping you do your coolant changes. You don't spill everything everywhere. Handy little device. Glad I got that. Got it at Amazon.com. But I decided I was going to check and see, if I had bubbles in the system, which unfortunately I did. I kept thinking that possibly there were still air trapped in the system because I had replaced the radiator and filled it back up with coolant. Did all the right things, but I still kept losing more coolant than I thought I should have. And, I would have it up and it would just continue to bubble at operating temperature. That's not good. So, what I have done is, pardon the movement here, I went to Harbor Freight and picked up one of the leak down testers. It's only about 40 bucks. Nice little device, but it does have a bit of a drawback. Oh, hold on, I'm missing one piece. I've got it in the car. Let me go get that and put it side by side. This is the entire setup. So you'll have your two gauges. On the left is where you hook your compressor. On the right, this is the adapter that will actually fit into the cylinder. Now, it just so happens there are two other adapters that come in the kit. Didn't have to use those. This is threaded just right for the Honda. This end will connect here, and this end is screwed gently into each cylinder. Now, there is a rubber O-ring on there. I moisten out with a little bit of oil because you don't want to tear that. And you don't have to screw it down extremely tightly. You just want to screw it down enough that you have a good seal. So I used this leak down tester, but I discovered a bit of a problem. When you do hook it up to your compressor on this gauge, it tells you how much pressure is being sent through the system. It's adjusted here, and then here it will tell you how much leakage there is. Well, I ran the test and it really didn't show any leakage. I was a little bit surprised. But when I looked on the gauge, it only puts out maybe 15 psi through this gauge. And I thought, well, maybe there's not enough pressure. So I went and I took this adapter and I connected it directly to the compressor, because the compression psi is far greater than what you could ever accomplish with a garage compressor that you might have. The psi on the compression stroke is much higher than what you could ever backfeed into. So I'm going to go over here. My suspicion was that it was going to be one of those cylinders, at least one cylinder, on the firewall side. Yep, always got to be the most difficult. Now, again, 6-cylinder engine. So, cylinder number 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, the firing order is going to be 1, then down here to 4, then back up to 2, then back down to 5, back up to 3, and back down to 6. Now let me get in close and you can see on the back side. Might be a little dark, but the cylinders are on the back side here. So again, my suspicion was that it was going to be one of the cylinders on the back side. So give me a second, let me set this up and I'll show you exactly what happened. Forgot one minor detail. How did I know I was at top dead center on any of the cylinders? Well, due to the design of this particular car, there's a little cap right here on the cover. You can see it right down there. There's a cap on the cover of the timing belt. And if you look down close, and I had to actually move the dipstick out of the way, if you look very closely in there, you can see there's a line to the left. I will turn that clockwise until I line up with that little tab on the bottom. If you look, there's a black line on the bottom of the cover, and you'll see that's cylinder number 2. So when I line that up, that will be top dead center number 2, and that was the affected cylinder that I finally discovered. Now I take a 19mm wrench and I attach it to the power steering pump and I turn it until it matches. As you notice, you can't really see the 2 at this point, but you can see that it is lined up. Maybe just a smidgen more, but that's top dead center for cylinder number 2. Okay, so here's the funnel. I haven't hooked it up yet. I cannot really hold this and connect the line at the same time to show you as this begins to fill up. But as you can see, the radiator had been topped off, but there's nothing in the funnel at this point. So I'm going to hook this up and show you what happened. Oh, the pressure that I used, I started out at like 25, then 50, got up to around 75 or 80, and this is what about 75 or 80 psi will do on cylinder number 2. There we go. Up through the ground comes a bubbling crude. Whoops, splashing on me. So, we do have positive confirmation that cylinder number 2 has a leak. Again, this engine is stone cold. I ran it through all of the cylinders. This is the only one, and as I estimated, it is cylinder number 2, which is on the back side. Plan of attack is I'm going to have to tear this down, and I'm going to have to do head gaskets on both. It's just my luck that if I only did the one that was affected, the other one would go 2 or 3 months from now. So I'm going to end up doing a head gasket job on both, since this is a V6. At the same time, too, I have no idea when the timing belt was done on this car, and all the tensioners and idler pulleys and water pump, so I'm going to go ahead and do that at the same time since I've torn it down. So that's going to be another major project for me. So let's do a little recap here. So we had an overheat situation times 2, and several radiators that gave way. So they always say, you know, if you have a blown head gasket, that's like a symptom. That's not necessarily the cause. So you have to look for the cause, otherwise the same thing's going to happen. And I think for whatever reason, the overheat situations, and I suspect a clogged radiator. I had that happen on a Mazda B2000 many years ago. The radiator became clogged and overheated and blew the head gasket twice. As a matter of fact, the first mechanic didn't check the radiator. He had to repair it again. And So it was time and money out of his pocket. But I think the overheat situation caused the issue, which also gave the back pressure and blew out the subsequent radiators. I will again have to repair this car. You know, it's a hobby. Yeah, my wife is very upset again, but you know, she doesn't repair cars. And I think it's probably going to cost me, I've been tallying things up. Right now I'm looking at probably $400 to $500 in parts. Some of it's going to be OEM. Actually, most of it is going to be OEM. I will, like I say, also replace the timing belt and the idler pulley, tensioner, so forth and so on since I'm in there. You don't want to get in there, spend all this time doing this, and end up having to do it again. The coolant was pretty good, so I'll be able to just drain that. I'll have to take the heads off, take them to a shop, have them pressure tested. Hopefully there's no warpage. And I'll have them check out the valves and the seats. I will then have to also put it back together and do a valve adjustment. Not too difficult, just, you know, kind of inaccessible. But I've had far worse cars. Eric the Car Guy does a very good video on how to do a V6, I think it's this particular J30 engine, how to do the valve adjustments on this particular engine, which helps. That's one of his freebies. Let's see, what else can I say? If I come up with something else, I'll get back to you, but as you can see, I'm going to be doing a head gasket job ×2. Now remember what I was going to say in the recap. The U.S. General Harbor Freight leak down tester really didn't show much of an issue. It wasn't significant enough of pressure behind that system that I think to show this particular leak. So therefore the leak down tester in this case with that minimal pressure didn't help much at all. Now I'm sure there are better systems out there, and as I understand from a mechanic that I use on justanswer.com, Honda Dashman, his tester was much more expensive, but you know, again, he's a Honda mechanic, and it would have shown something like this because the input pressure is much higher. So you know, I'm not faulting the Harbor Freight tool. What I did get out of it was the adapter. Now another way to do this is, what if you didn't have this leak down tester and you wanted to do just what I did? Well, if you've got somebody with a compression tester, you can use that, but you just have to take the Schrader valve out at the other end where it attaches to the gauge. Because if you know, it will hold that pressure until you hit the release valve. Well, the release valve is actually hitting a Schrader valve like a bicycle tire, releases that pressure. Well, if you unscrew that, you could do the same thing. So if you know anybody with a compression tester and the proper tool to take out a Schrader valve, you could do the same thing. In my case, I just went ahead and bought this tool. I don't consider it a loss, but it is a learning experience.